Boston Celtics camp questions were on number 4. Will Brad Stevens feel compelled to make an early move? What would happen with the Celtics in October and November for Brad to pull the trigger on a deal around December? What needs to happen for him to say, I got to do this now? We're going to talk about it right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and I'm here for you every day, Monday through Friday, with a free, fresh podcast wherever you get your podcasts. So subscribe. You can watch the show on YouTube. Check it out there. Ring the bell, get notified whenever I drop a new video. I'm John Karalis, former professional basketball player, credentialed beat writer, covering the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. Now I'm in my 16th season covering the team. I've also written a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars. Today's show, continuing the camp questions. We've gone through 3. So we've asked if they are able to handle the pressure of expectations. We've asked, can Robert Williams make another leap? The yesterday's show was about Ime Udoka and his potential for a second-year evolution. How's that going to look? And today we're asking, as you might read in the description of the show, will Brad Stevens feel compelled to make an early move this season? So let's bring in my buddy, Tom_NBA, Tom Westerholm. How's it going, Tom?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm great. You got that mustache going, really. That's strong.
I got it back.
I feel like the look you've got right now makes me think you're angling to be Ted Lasso at Halloween.
Well, funny you should mention that. I recently signed my son up for soccer, and I put down on the sign up because I figured, there will probably be a lot of parents who put this down, that I was willing to be an assistant coach. And not a lot of parents were willing to do that because I am now an assistant coach. And this past weekend, the head coach was like, hey, by the way, I can't make it, so can you coach the team? So this past weekend, my U7 team won roughly 15-5. I want to shout out, I'm not gonna, I think first names are fine. I want to shout out Dominic. And I want to shout out Grayson for scoring goals. They did great.
That's everyone else. Get to work. Get back to the lab.
Including my son.
But all right.
Shout out to Dominic and Grayson. They scored a lot of goals.
They scored a lot of goals. Under 7 league, huh? That must be. Is that because the goalie was distracted by a butterfly?
Oh, buddy, we don't have goalies in U7.
It's just whoever has enough hand-eye coordination to get it through the cones.
Well, foot-eye, yes. And anybody who can.
All right, foot-eye coordination, yeah.
Yeah, anybody who can kick a soccer ball in roughly the right direction enough times, it's there you go. Eventually type Shakespeare, yeah.
All right, fantastic. Yeah. Well, that's fun. Let's get to some basketball.
What I'm trying to say is I am Ted Lasso. All right, let's get to
You are very, very Ted Lasso. I mean, you have the look like down. I mean, you now I'm thinking Jayson Sudeikis plays you in the Locked On Celtics movie. Yeah, that is definitely for sure. I don't know who plays me.
I don't know, but I know who writes the soundtrack.
Oh, it's got to be Millies.
It's got to be Millies.
It's got to be Millies. We'll figure out who plays me.
Yeah.
It's got to be either Brad Pitt or I'm a little older, so now it's probably more George Clooney. But it's one of the two. So
yeah.
Media Day is Monday. Media Day is less than a week away. By this time, we're recording this on Monday evening. By this time next week, I will have written stories on Boston Sports Journal about Media Day and having talked to these guys. It's blowing my mind. And starting off, all of these camp questions that we're asking, getting into the Brad Stevens thing, I think, will Brad Stevens feel compelled to make an early move is such an all-encompassing, like so many, I think every other question potentially has like a tentacle in this answer. Because if the answer is yes, it's because a lot of things didn't go well. And if the answer is no, then it means that a lot of these answers that we're asking have positive results.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's one of the more kind of ambiguous questions too, because it's like, will he make an early season move, or will he be compelled to make a move? It's like, well, that could be a small move, right? That could be like, okay, Gallo went down, and Sam Hauser isn't actually like everything that that everybody hoped he would be, or
Right.
I mean, hey, like this having two guys in a very similar role with Malcolm Brogdon and Derek White is a little too much, and we needed to, move one of them along because one of them wasn't getting enough playing time and the fit just wasn't there. And Brad saw up close and personal what can happen with a bad fit in 2018-19. And, it's just, it's a very interesting question, partly because, like there's such a wide range of outcomes if the answer is yes. If the answer is no, then it's like, okay, then Brad didn't make a move. But if the answer is yes, then there's just a number of things that could be coming down the pike.
Yeah, I think so. We want to start with the most likely scenario for him making a move. I'm going to say the most likely thing that will make him feel compelled to make an early move, the first thing that he might do is if Luke Cornett isn't showing himself to be.
You shut your mouth.
I know that we're later on going to do the Hall of Fame podcast possibilities for Luke Cornett, but situation matters, and sometimes all-time great players like Luke Cornett just don't gel the right way. You can't have that many alphas on the team, Tom. So the obviously the backup big situation is that was always a big, no pun intended, topic coming into this season over the course of the past couple of months. If Luke Cornett doesn't live up to the confidence that the team has in him, and the team does have confidence in him in this role, if he comes out and it's just not working, then I think that will be the first thing that Brad needs to address, because tied into that is the past question that we asked about Robert Williams and him making a leap and making sure that he stays healthy. And also the next question that we're going to ask, which is going to be about Al Horford and what does he have left in the tank? If Luke Cornett can't help those two guys get enough rest, if the Celtics feel like, oh my God, it's November, December, and we have to lean on those guys a lot, then you will see as soon as humanly possible, Brad Stevens make a move to correct that, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think you can go back even to, the playoffs when Robert Williams, started kind of being a little more limited. And it was pretty clear that he wasn't feeling his greatest, and the struggles that the Celtics had during that time. Like it's super important that the Celtics keep those guys healthy. And I think one of the things that's interesting is that the Cornett thing is kind of tied to the Sam Hauser thing, right? It's the same idea of like, hey,
Sure.
Can this guy do it? Can this guy fill in this role that the Celtics really need him to do? If it does kind of seem like if that does work, then the Celtics got a little lucky, because they kind of, they're putting two guys in there and they're really like, okay, you are the backup shooter, you are the backup big man, show us what you got. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why the Celtics maintained a lot of flexibility, why they didn't go out and like panic sign some big man, because hey, if you go out and panic sign some big man and what you really needed was somebody who could come in and be the shooter, then you've already allocated that resource, or you've already filled that roster spot, or vice versa. If you go out and fill Gallo's role right away, then what if Luke Cornett needs to be replaced? So yeah, I think, but to your point though, I think Cornett is he's going to be under a microscope right away. It's going to be really interesting because like you said, the Celtics have projected a lot of confidence in him, but he is going to have a lot of eyes and a very kind of significant amount of pressure that he really hasn't had to this point. Like to this point, it's just like, hey, play pretty well in Maine. We kind of like you, keep you around. Like, hey, come on in. Like, we'll bring you in. But then, yeah, when they don't sign a backup big man, it's like, okay, Luke, it is prove it time, my guy.
Yep. And I think baked into that is, like you said, there's Sam Hauser, but there's also, Kabengele. Can they get by with some of that? Can Grant fill in some of that role? How the whole backup big situation pans out is the key here. And I think one of the things I mentioned in yesterday's podcast about Ime Udoka's evolution is the evolution of the team, the players, Tatum and Brown and Smart and Rob and Al. Not Al as much. I mean, he's pretty much a known entity, but the other guys,
evolved.
Yeah, he's pretty evolved at this point. Too evolved, some might say. But their ability to hold things down may give Luke and the others a little bit more rope, because if you've got the other four guys, the other five guys on the floor, and this is a guy who's coming in off the bench, if those other guys can say, hey, we get what Ime's trying to do, the whole thing is flowing pretty well. Luke Cornett is doing some things well, but it's not quite working. But everything else is going so well that they're still winning and they're still hanging on. And there's maybe Al plays a little bit more than they had hoped, but not so much more that it's a problem right now. And they're still coming out strong and at the top. If the Celtics team, if the guys on the floor can come out and I think start well ahead of where they were at this point last year. If they can start playing in October, November, the way they were playing in January, February, then that might give the backup big situation a little bit more time, make it a little bit more fluid. So maybe Brad doesn't feel the need to say, okay, I'm going to do this, as soon as the December 15th, when the restrictions lift, you're going to hear the rumors that the Celtics agree to a deal on December 12th, and it's just contingent on the restrictions lifting on December 15th, and that's when they're going to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, they can buy themselves a lot of time with this. They can buy Cornette a lot of time with that. And I mean, look, I think it's worthwhile to remember too that early in the season, when you talk about Brad making an early move, early is a very relative term too, right? Like how early are we talking here? Because he's going to give these guys some time to work through things. And not for nothing, last year's team being bad at the start and kind of getting it together, midway through the season, I'm curious, is that going to make Brad more patient anyway, even if they don't start off hot? He's seen them get it together before. So yeah, I mean, that will obviously play a massive role there too.
There are other instances where Brad Stevens might feel like he needs to make an early move. We'll get to that in just a second. First, let's talk about BetOnline.net, your number one source for all your betting needs, especially now that football season is here and in full swing. College football, pro football, it's all there at BetOnline.net. Everything you need this season, from the latest developments, matchups, news, podcasts, everything you want football-wise is there. But also every other sport. Basketball is around the corner, so NBA lines are going to be coming out. MMA, boxing, MLB, playoffs, all of that there. Golf, whatever is basically being played, it's all there at BetOnline, your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head on over to BetOnline.net today. You can use your mobile device if you'd like. Learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Make Locked On NBA your second listen every day. I host on Wednesdays with Jake Madison of Locked On Pelicans. We have a lot of fun there. Everybody has a lot of fun. It's rotating hosts Monday through Friday. Daily podcast covering the whole league. Find it wherever you found Locked On Celtics, including YouTube. Let's get to another scenario. I think one interesting thing that I'm watching is the Danilo Gallinari situation. Obviously, there might be some early move coming if the Celtics bench, and this is, I think, more where Sam Hauser comes in. If Hauser isn't the shooter that the Celtics need off the bench, then I wonder how long it would take for the Celtics to go ahead and try to make a move. They have obviously veteran minimums. People talk about Carmelo Anthony, which sigh. Okay, fine. Veteran minimum, whatever. I'm just going to look the other way. Every time I say that, the Melo stands come into into the mentions, come into the comments, and just like really, they are still out there in force. But it may be somebody else, maybe him, might be somebody else, might be a trade.
Melo stands real quick. Melo stands like Jayson Tatum, who liked the tweet saying that the Celtics were interested in.
I mean, it's different, man. The players are different. Players are just different. And that's the thing that players don't like fully grasp. I think they overlook so much when it comes to building a team. They don't sit there and say, okay, we've got this guy, that guy, minutes wise. They're just like, Tatum's like, hell yeah, Carmelo Anthony. Oh my God, I used to watch him when I was growing up. This would be amazing to play with Carmelo Anthony. And I'm sure it would be, for him, but also guy's 85 years old. He can still shoot a little bit. That's fine. He's just if his name wasn't Carmelo Anthony, that exact skill set, that game would not be as in high demand. That's all I'm saying is there's a lot of name recognition there, but it's possible that Brad, before even making a trade for somebody to address the big man situation, might in November say, whoa, hey, we definitely need more off the bench. Sam Hauser is not cutting it, and these other guys are not quite cutting it, and we need another guy off the bench that can help.
Yeah, and I think, like even maybe like Cornette, I see why people think that like why you would say that's like the number one, but I mean, like Hauser has so little experience. He hasn't been able to stay healthy yet. We have all these like sort of apocryphal stories almost of guys being like, yeah, man, but like Sam Hauser's jumper. This guy's like, this guy's the best shooter I've ever seen. And then we've talked about this before, but then you start like, but it's like a spot up jumper, and he has to be like standing in one spot, and it's like, okay, so
right.
So he can hit knockdown. And I don't doubt that he's a knockdown spot up shooter, but his shot looks beautiful, right? Like it is just we've talked about it. It's a gorgeous jumper, but like,
sure,
it's I kind of want to see it. I'm not as funny as this sounds from someone like myself. I'm not the biggest Sam Hauser believer in the world. Like we'll see how it looks, but I could see that being a place that the Celtics need to upgrade. I'm
just checking the connection here. Is this Tom Westerholm, or that saying he's not the biggest Sam Hauser believer? You don't believe in the shooter?
He can shoot, but I mean, look, that like the Celtics, I guess the nice thing about him being a spot up shooter, though, of course, is that he he's not going to demand other things, right? Like he's not, he doesn't need the ball in his hands all the time, but he still needs to hold up on the defensive end. He still needs to show that he can stay healthy because, look, the reason that he's getting all these minutes is because the guy in front of him couldn't stay healthy, with freak accident, all that. But I don't know. I could see shooting being like a real area of concern. We saw last year how important that is. We saw how much the Celtics need to make sure that Tatum and Jaylen have their room. And, we'll see kind of where Malcolm Brogdon, what kind of a season he has in that regard. But they don't have a lot of guaranteed, just 3-point shooting off the bench. And Hauser has to do that. And I don't know. We'll see. It's very unproven. I almost think more unproven than Luke Cornette, because Luke Cornette is proven to be a tall man. Like, we know that he is tall. And when you're a backup big, that does a lot for you. Like, if you're tall. If you're a shooter, like, you have to perform. When you get those looks, you have to hit them.
You have to hit them. That's your job. Your job is to hit those shots. And yeah, you're right. Luke Cornette, I mean, he's had a spotty career at best, but he has shown the ability to at least have some success at the NBA level. He's there. He's on the fringe. He's not gonna change anybody's jersey collection or anything like that. But he's has some level of NBA acumen, and we'll see if the situation and the teammates can pull a little bit more out of him. That's kind of how role players like this go. When you're in the right spot where you can do the exact thing that it is that you do well, and your teammates can kind of fit around that so perfectly and they're so good that all you got to do is these few things. Then you do them well, and people are like, "Oh my God, look at the season that he's having." This is the Jayson kid effect on Brian Scalabrine. This is why Brian Scalabrine is even doing Celtics games as a broadcaster, because he was a role player that got an opportunity next to Jayson Kidd and did the exact thing that he was supposed to do. Didn't try to do too much, did exactly what he was supposed to do, got paid in Boston, became a cult hero in Boston. Not exactly the fairy tale story, but eventually got to that level. Yeah. And Scalabrine is here, and he's like this cult hero in Boston. That's kind of the potential for the Luke Cornett type player, the Sam Hauser type player in this world, where you have a certain skill set. The other guys are so good. You're in a position to do exactly what you do well. Sam Hauser's in a position to do exactly what he does well. Catch the ball, shoot the ball, put the ball through the hoop, and then run back. Hopefully you can play some okay defense, come back, and when the attention is on everybody else, you can catch the ball, shoot the ball, and make another basket. If he can do that, then great. Then he becomes a hero. And even if he's one-dimensional, so be it. And then that's another move that Brad Stevens doesn't have to make. So all of these questions are, if a guy does the job, then great. Then Brad Stevens will not feel compelled to add another big, even though it's up for debate. If Sam Hauser can hit some shots, then no, he will not feel compelled to make an early move for Carmelo Anthony or anybody else, because, hey, we got a guy who can hit the shots, and whatever, that's fine. Boom, done. We don't need to bring in more salary. You don't need to pay the luxury tax anymore. So then what? Is there something else coming? You mentioned Malcolm Brogdon and Marcus Smart and Derek White. Maybe maybe what Brad Stevens feels compelled to do is make a trade deadline. Maybe there is no early move. Let's take a second here. Let's come back. We'll talk about Brad Stevens and what he might do beyond fixing the end of the bench. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Now, how about making the NBA Top 50 on Locked On NBA your second listen? Which NBA player moves the betting line the most this season? Locked On and the BetOnline odds makers present NBA Top 50 Most Valuable Players. You can find it on Locked On NBA, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube. They're going in increments of 10, so numbers 41 through 50 are on there. There is a Celtic who is in there. So obviously in the top 50, we know we got two other main Celtics. There's a third Celtic who is in that back end of that 50. And I talk about that guy. You got to listen to the show. That's called a tease. All right, Tom Westerholm, let's get back into it. Is there another scenario where you think Brad might say, okay, right around December, by Christmas or something like that, where kind of in a Dennis Schroeder type of move, where Brad's going to be like, okay, we covered those other two scenarios. Is there another scenario where you think Brad is going to do something before we even talk about trade deadline?
I honestly kind of doubt it, but I think if he was going to, it would come down to one of two things. I think either Peyton Pritchard looks like redundant and has like some value, right? Like if Brad could wrangle something out of yet another backup guard when he's already got a couple, that would be kind of interesting. And then, other than that, I think it just kind of comes down to like, if disaster strikes, right? Like if it's really bad and he's and he's like trying to salvage, a bunch of things that you could never have seen coming, and he's like, all right, look, Grant has value. Somebody, what can we get for this guy? But realistically, I mean, I think, like I said before, I think the way that last year's team kind of turned its season around, the way that Jayson Tatum tends to play better in the second half, like if the Celtics struggle in the first half, I could see like trade deadline moves. But up until then, it's just like I think there's going to be enough kind of getting used to each other with all the new pieces, and even Derek White. Like I kind of count Derek White as a new piece because last year was like kind of the throw him in the fire type situation.
Sure.
So I kind of think that Brad is gonna want to see what he has. That said, I did think it was interesting and noteworthy that Whit Grousbeck too this week was like, I'm gonna be watching this team like a hawk. I'm gonna be now there's some pressure on this one. Like this team has to perform because otherwise, I think then I think moves might be made.
Well, and that's going to be my next point here, where I don't know how much room the Celtics have to see what works. And I do think it's in their favor, obviously, that Malcolm Brogdon's the only real new guy that they've added, right? He's the only real kind of just needs to get acclimated, figure it out. And I did a separate question on him that'll come later, or you can read it right now on Boston Sports Journal if you'd like. The addition of Brogdon is the only real kind of piece you have to work in. Everybody else has been here. Everybody knows. They know what Ime wants. They know how Ime acts. They know how to, they understand everything that they're supposed to be doing. It's just a matter of going to do it with a little bit of a different mix of players. But all of those players in that mix were already here. Hauser and Cornette and those guys were already part of the team. So the pressure of all of these other teams getting better and not being able to just sit back and say, yeah, okay, we lost 3 in a row, but they're just working out some kinks. Well, you lose 3 in a row and you fall 2 games behind the number 1 seed. And all of a sudden that just feels magnified. It doesn't feel like 2 games. It feels like 4 or 5. And because those teams aren't going to lose a whole lot. And there are a lot of teams chasing you, especially when you're the Celtics and you're going to have a target on your back. There's no easy game for them on the schedule. Even if you say, well, Orlando will be an easy game. No, because Orlando is a young team with a ton to prove. And here come the Eastern Conference champs, NBA finalists. Here's a great opportunity because half the Celtics games are on national TV. We're going to be like, hey, we're going to get some exposure here. If the Celtics lose to a bad team, that's going to be like one of the lead stories on NBA TV and, NBA Today and all of that. So there is going to be, I think, pressure. And I think where Brad in December might have said, I'm good. Let's just let Luke figure it out. Let's just let Sam figure it out. I think there might be some different type of feelings here where December comes around and those restrictions lift and he's getting it from the owner and he's getting it from us in the media. And it's just like, we can't wait that long. Sorry, Luke, it's just not going to happen. And we gotta make a move.
Yeah. That said, I do think all of that stuff happens around the margins, right? Like that's just like as much pressure as there is on this team, I don't think that anything truly like major would happen this season because like the other thing about Brad is that I don't think he's going to make a panic move. Like that's not who he is. And like, he something would have to shake free for him. So I guess that's the other thing, right? Like if another team is struggling and the Celtics see like a perfect trade, then maybe, but I just like the way that Brad is, like who he is and, like the way that he kind of interacts with personnel and players and all of that. It just, I can't see him just kind of making a move to like a bad stretch in December that might drop them to, 3rd or 4th in the East. And yeah, that's not where you want to be come playoff time, but it's just, it's hard for me to believe that Brad would make, kind of move a bunch of pieces around just because there's pressure based on losses. Like he's a process guy. He's not really a results guy. He's much more of a process guy.
Yeah. But also the process when you're putting the team together around those margins, like you can sit there and say, we'll wait on Malcolm Brogdon to figure his stuff out because
Right.
he's never had to play 3 positions off the bench, spot start. Like you can sit there and say, and he's also, he had once been a 20-point a game scorer, and he's kind of a fringe all-star type of guy at his best. Luke Cornett is not. And so if that's not working, then it's very much easier to rip that Band-Aid off than it is to say, hey, well, look, Malcolm's struggling with his jumper because he's getting acclimated and he's not used to this role. You're not going to trade him away. And even Derek White, you're not going to move him early because he's still struggling with his jumper because they made a big commitment to him. I think they really they gave up multiple first round picks. So even if they say, hey, this isn't exactly the right mix, I don't think they're going to turn around and dump him. So I just think the moves, the early moves that Brad might feel compelled to make would be the margins, would be we need that 8th guy, that 9th guy to support our top 7, because we need that depth, because we need to make sure that Jaylen and Jayson aren't being overtaxed, and we need somebody to make sure that Al Horford can have a day off without us, having acid reflux, worrying about how that game's going to go. So my last question to you here in this vein is, do you think Brad Stevens trades Danilo Gallinari, almost uses him as another pseudo TPE, but you can actually combine him with other salaries and get somebody? I think that, sorry, Gallo, this sucks, but this is the business. You tear your ACL and definitely gone for the season. I think it may be a chance he comes back for the playoffs, but even then, we were talking about he might not even be playable in the playoffs anyway. So,
Right.
I think that there's a fairly good chance that if you put percentages on it, it's a higher than people might expect percentage that Gallo might just get traded, and that salary could be used to bring somebody else in that can actually play.
Well, look, Gallo's done for the season, so he can go wherever he wants, right? Like he can hang out in Boston. They just got to trade him.
Yeah,
you're a big Celtics fan. You can go to the games. You just can't be on the team anymore.
Right.
Yeah. No, right. I agree with you. I think, like, especially when the trade deadline comes around, assuming I'm right and they wait around a little bit. But whatever happens, yes, I think that you're exactly right. Like the TPE, plus you can combine it, plus he wasn't going to be that important to the team anyway. And it's not like, this wouldn't be like an Isaiah Thomas situation. Like nobody would be like, what are you doing? This is an atrocity. Like even Gallo's agent, I assume, because it doesn't really matter. He's still getting his money. Like,
right.
I think it's a no-brainer. I think moving him along, and hey, I mean, look, you can always try again in the future if you want. Like, who knows how many years he's got left. But I think that betting on Gallo leaving is a pretty safe bet, or betting on Gallo being dealt is a pretty safe bet.
It just makes too much sense. And I know Wick Grossbeck did say, spend. Good. Brad can do whatever you want. Brad can spend however much he wants. But there is still the unspoken on the other end of that. Yeah, but when you spend, can we kind of save some money somewhere as well?
Yes.
Like, he's not going to get in Brad Stevens' way. Nothing that he said suggests that he would get in Brad Stevens' way and say, that's too expensive. But if you can move Gallinari and use that, $7 million, almost $7 million, and you can take back 10. That's fine. We'll pay that, but also don't just find a way to bring in salary and have this guy sitting there. If you can trade him and let's save a little bit of that money, then that's meaningful. So yeah, I just feel like a Gallinari trade just makes too much sense.
Also, if you read between the lines of what Wick is saying, pretty much whenever he responds to questions about whether he's willing to pay the salary tax, almost every time you will see some form of like, I am willing to spend for a contender. And there's this kind of like it's just this little twinge of
Just
like,
a little bit.
but don't go crazy. Like I'm not like this little twinge of like, I'm not the Yankees here. Like don't,
Yeah.
which is fair, right? Like, yeah, build a good team.
Right.
I will pay for it if it's a contender, but like, just
Look, it's
we'll work together here.
you get the Analogy Man theme music. It's like if I'm going to buy a car, right? And I say, hey, look, I got a budget. I can buy this car. And I'm not worried about the cost, but I am going to shop around to make sure I'm getting the right value. And I might have a trade-in. Like, I'm not wasn't exactly maybe looking at, but if you take the trade, then yeah, I'll buy this car. Versus, Golden State Warriors type of person, like, yeah, I'll take that car in black with the bucket seats, everything, and here's a briefcase full of hundreds. Take it, count it out, whatever's left over, go buy lunch. That's the difference. Like, yeah, go spend, buy yourself something new, fine, but also let's be somewhat responsible here.
Right.
It's not on a budget, but also not exactly lighting cigars with money.
Right. Yeah. I think that is, and look, it's good business, so it's hard to blame him. But that's exactly like that. I think that is exactly the Wick Grossbeck vibe. Whenever you talk to him about the salary cap, and I think any of us would have the same vibe if we were NBA owners. So
that's right. That's right. All right, Tom. Appreciate you coming on, talking camp questions. Talk to you next time.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I love it. Thanks everybody for checking this out. So again, media day is Monday. So let's see. This is the Tuesday camp question. This is question number 4. So we'll have to take a little detour and interrupt the series because the Tuesday podcast will certainly be the events of Monday. And moving forward, obviously there'll be practices next week. We're getting back into the swing of actual NBA basketball. I can't believe it's back already. I just can't believe it's back already. It's amazing. So 5 days a week, this show's back daily, Monday through Friday. So if you love the show, you're still here and you haven't subscribed yet, then this is a great time to hit that subscribe button so you get a free, fresh podcast daily, Monday through Friday, directly to your device, or watch the show on YouTube. You can enjoy my backgrounds. People have requested I've actually requested this background so they could use it on their Zooms. I'll tweet it out. So I'll do that. You can watch the show on YouTube, subscribe, get that, hit that bell, make those comments, make sure you're feeding the algorithm as much as you can. Basketball being back, there's going to be a lot to talk about. So I appreciate you subscribing and sharing the podcast, telling your friends and family and everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.